The movie begins with an inspiring message that changing the world requires a little genius. The first scene opens with a heartwarming scene of a newborn baby and a joyous family, followed by similar scenes of other families reuniting with their babies in a hospital. Amidst this, we encounter Mrs. Wormwood, humorously in denial about her pregnancy until she suddenly goes into labor. Amidst singing doctors, she gives birth to Matilda. However, Mr. Wormwood arrives, comically dismayed to discover they have a daughter instead of the son he desperately wanted. The parents, initially shocked and preferring a boy, awkwardly adjust to their new roles. Their imperfect adaptation is shown as they often mistakenly call Matilda a boy, underscoring their lingering desire for a son. This introduction emotionally sets the tone for Matilda's unique story. Matilda herself is portrayed as a remarkably bright and curious young girl. Her greatest passion lies in immersing herself in the fantastical worlds found within the pages of her beloved books. In a world where she feels misunderstood by her family, her solace and companionship come in the form of the warm and compassionate librarian, Mrs. Phelps. This kind-hearted woman becomes Matilda's only true friend and confidant. The plot thickens when a school inspector and a teacher from the formidable Cruncham Hall visit the Wormwood household. They are there to address a concerning matter. Matilda has not been enrolled in school. During this visit, Miss Honey, a teacher from the school, speaks to Matilda. She paints a vivid picture of the exciting and diverse subjects Matilda will have the opportunity to explore and learn, sparking a light of interest in Matilda's eyes. In contrast, Mr. Wormwood's concerns are more self-centered. Fearful of being fined for neglecting his daughter's education, he hastily decides to seek the intervention of Agatha Trunchbull, the school's fearsome headmistress. Matilda, demonstrating her clever nature, decides to take control of the situation in her own unique way. In a sneaky and humorous act of rebellion, she slyly adds hair dye to her father's hair tonic. The result is comical yet symbolic. Mr. Wormwood's hair turns a vivid shade of green. By the time the family realizes what has happened, Matilda is safely back in her room, a look of satisfaction on her face for her successful, although small, act of defiance. This scene sets the tone for Matilda's character, a girl who, despite her young age and small stature, is not afraid to stand up for herself and make her presence known. The next morning, Matilda embarks on her journey to Cruncham Hall for her first day of school. She sets off on foot, her steps filled with a mix of nervous excitement and curiosity. Matilda's punctuality is remarkable. She arrives a whole hour before the school gates officially open. As she waits, she is pleasantly surprised by the appearance of Mrs. Phelps. The two share a warm and friendly encounter, filling the time with engaging conversation. During this morning, Matilda captivates Mrs. Phelps with a mesmerizing story. She weaves a tale about an escapologist and his acrobatic wife, a duo celebrated for their breathtaking and daredevil performances in the circus. Matilda's storytelling skills shine as she describes their most audacious and risky stunt to date. However, just as she reaches the climax of her exciting story, the school bell's ring cuts through the air. It's a reminder that her school day is about to begin. With a sense of reluctance, Matilda bids farewell to Mrs. Phelps and heads towards her new educational journey. Upon her arrival at school, Matilda's path crosses with another new student, Lavender. The two girls instantly click and begin to forge a friendship. Their brief moment is interrupted by some older students who are school prefects. These prefects warn Matilda and Lavender about the challenges and trials that await them in the school. Matilda's first experience in Miss Honey's class is nothing short of remarkable. She astonishes her teacher by swiftly solving complex mathematical equations that were left on the classroom board. Miss Honey, recognizing Matilda's extraordinary talent, decides to take this matter to the headmistress, Trunchbull. She hopes to discuss Matilda's exceptional abilities and potentially secure better opportunities for her. However, Trunchbull, with her dismissive and harsh view of children, whom she refers to as maggots, shows no interest. She boasts about her own past achievements as a hammer thrower and stubbornly insists that her harsh methods are the only way to effectively manage a school. Meanwhile, back at Matilda's home, the atmosphere is starkly different. Mr. Wormwood is in the midst of bragging about his upcoming deal to sell luxury cars to some wealthy clients. Matilda, who has been listening to her father's questionable business ethics, cannot hold back her disapproval and speaks up against it. In a fit of spite, Mr. Wormwood reacts by callously tearing up Matilda's library copy. In a silent but defiant act of retaliation, Matilda resorts to a cunning trick. She applies super glue to her father's hat. This act of mischief sets the stage for an ongoing battle of wits and wills between Matilda and her father, showcasing her cleverness and courage in standing up against wrongdoing, even within her own family. Soon after, Matilda's experience at Cruncham Hall is marked by her meeting with a group of students who share her dislike for the school and its oppressive headmistress. These students introduce Matilda to the concept of choky, a notorious punishment shed located in the woods, used by the headmistress, Trunchbull, to discipline students. One particularly tense day at school, Nigel finds himself in trouble. Accused by Trunchbull of having put treacle on her chair, he panics and flees the classroom. Matilda, quick-thinking and resourceful, devises a clever plan to protect him. She orchestrates a way to hide Nigel under the blazers of other students. When Trunchbull demands the students line up, Matilda ingeniously covers for Nigel, claiming he has narcolepsy and needed to be shielded from the sun. Trunchbull, ever eager to display her cruelty, soon turns her attention to Amanda for her distinctive pigtails. In a shocking and violent display, she swings Amanda around by her hair, launching her a great distance. Miraculously, Amanda remains unharmed. Matilda's storytelling sessions with Mrs. Phelps continue to be a highlight of her days. As she narrates her tale, it feels as though they are transported to the front row of a theater, witnessing the dramatic lives of the escapologist and acrobat unfold. Matilda introduces a new character, inspired by the fearsome Trunchbull, the acrobat's cruel stepsister, a former hammer thrower. The story takes a dark turn when the acrobat, pregnant and apprehensive, is forced by her stepsister to perform a dangerous stunt, bound by a contract she had unknowingly signed. The next day, Miss Honey brings a sense of hope and encouragement to Matilda, promising to bring in a special collection of books just for her. However, their excitement is cut short when Trunchbull bursts in, accusing one of the children of stealing her private chocolate cake. A loud burp inadvertently reveals Bruce as the culprit. Trunchbull cunningly offers Bruce a seemingly impossible challenge to finish an enormous chocolate cake. In a display of solidarity and support, the other children cheer Bruce on, and against all odds, he manages to finish the entire cake. Yet, Trunchbull's ruthlessness knows no bounds. Despite Bruce's accomplishment, she still plans to punish him by sending him to Choky. Matilda's protests fall on deaf ears as Bruce is taken away. On their walk home, the children express their dreams and aspirations through song, creating a moment of collective hope and resilience. Matilda then returns to Mrs. Phelps, continuing her gripping story. The narrative takes a tragic turn as the acrobat is forced into performing a perilous stunt involving dynamite and a pool of hungry sharks. In a harrowing sequence, the acrobat falls, suffering grave injuries. Though the doctors manage to save her baby, the strain of childbirth is too much for the acrobat, and she passes away, leaving her child in the care of her husband. However, the evil stepsister seizes control, subjecting the young girl to mistreatment behind the escapologist's back. When Matilda returns home from school, she is confronted with another example of her father's dishonesty. Mr. Wormwood, in his latest dubious endeavor, has managed to sell some of his fake luxury cars to unsuspecting wealthy buyers. He deceitfully claimed that these cars had low mileage, even though they had actually racked up over 100,000 miles. Disheartened and disgusted by her father's lack of integrity, Matilda seeks comfort in her room. There, she immerses herself in the continuation of her story. In this new chapter, the escapologist discovers the harsh treatment his daughter endures at the hands of the stepsister. He attempts a rescue, but his efforts end in mystery as he vanishes without a trace. Back at school, Miss Honey strives to provide a fun and educational experience for her students. However, their lesson is abruptly interrupted by Trunchbull, who demands that the children endure a grueling physical education session in the pouring rain. It is during this chaotic and harsh session that Matilda makes an astonishing discovery about herself. She possesses telekinetic powers. Seizing the opportunity to stand up against Trunchbull's dictatorship, Matilda cleverly uses her newfound abilities to drop a newt into Trunchbull's water cup. When Trunchbull accuses a student, Eric, of the prank and begins to abuse him, Matilda intervenes again. After school, Miss Honey invites Matilda over for tea and opens up about her own life story. She shares that she is the daughter of an escapologist and an acrobat, and was raised by her cruel step-aunt, who is none other than Trunchbull. This revelation allows Matilda to connect the dots between Miss Honey's harrowing story and her own narrative. The dark possibility that Trunchbull might have played a role in the disappearance of Miss Honey's father, Magnus, becomes increasingly apparent. Outraged by the injustices inflicted by Trunchbull, Matilda races home in the rain, fueled by anger and determination. Using her telekinetic powers, she demolishes the dreaded Chokey in the woods. Upon arriving home, Matilda is met with a scene of frantic activity. Her parents are hurriedly packing their bags, planning to flee the country. It turns out that Mr. Wormwood's deceitful car sales were to members of the mafia, who are now demanding their money back within 24 hours. To their dismay, Mrs. Wormwood has already spent the money, leaving them in a dire situation. With no other option, the Wormwoods decide to escape to Spain, insisting that Matilda accompany them. This forces Matilda to prepare for a heart-wrenching farewell to Miss Honey and the friends she has made at school. In a moment of sadness, she leaves a note for Mrs. Phelps, mentioning that not every story concludes with a happy ending. Meanwhile, Trunchbull, in a fit of fury over the destruction of the Chokey, gathers all the students and threatens them with a newly constructed, more intimidating Chokey. She singles out Lavender and intimidates her by forcing her to attempt to spell a bizarre word, further establishing her reign of fear and cruelty. In the climactic scenes of the story, the children at Cruncham Hall, inspired by Matilda's defiance, begin to stand up against the oppressive regime of their headmistress, Trunchbull. They start a small rebellion by intentionally misspelling words during a spelling test. Knowing that Trunchbull can't possibly punish all of them, Trunchbull, in a moment of fury, reveals that she has already constructed individual chokies, the dreaded punishment sheds for each child. However, Matilda, harnessing her extraordinary telekinetic powers, decides to take a stand. She uses her abilities to write a message on the chalkboard, impersonating as the spirit of Magnus, Miss Honey's father. This terrifies Trunchbull, shaking her to her core. In a dramatic turn of events, Matilda further humiliates Trunchbull by magically fashioning her hair into pigtails, reminiscent of those she so despised in her student Amanda. Matilda then creates a humanoid figure out of chains and uses it to destroy the other chokies. In a moment of poetic justice, she uses her powers to grab Trunchbull by the hair, swinging her around the room like a hammer thrower, a nod to Trunchbull's own past, and launches her through the roof. Upon Trunchbull's spectacular exit, Miss Honey bravely confronts her evil step-aunt, demanding that she leave and never return. Trunchbull, now utterly defeated and overwhelmed with fear, flees the scene. This marks a joyous moment for the children, who erupt in cheers and celebrations, finally freed from the dictatorial rule of their headmistress. In the midst of the euphoria, Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood arrive, intending to take Matilda with them to Spain. However, Miss Honey steps forward with a life-changing offer. She wants to adopt Matilda. After some consideration, Matilda's parents agree to this arrangement, and Matilda bids them farewell. Overwhelmed with happiness, Matilda runs into Miss Honey's arms, ecstatic at the prospect of having a loving and supportive guardian at last. The film concludes on a heartwarming note. Miss Honey takes charge of the school and renames it the Big Friendly School, symbolizing a new era of kindness and support for the students.